It's being put on by the Kidney Quality Improvement Partnership. So I'm here with my colleagues Leanne and Julie from our team, and it's in partnership with the Midlands Kidney Network, who I work really closely with and support quality improvement across the region with that network. This is the first of 4 sessions that we've got throughout the year, and they should be in all of your diaries. Let me know if they're not. And then there's a final celebration virtual event at the end of March next year, 2026, where hopefully we'll all be sharing with each other what we've done locally, the impact it's made and the learning. So the Midlands Kidney Network are a huge network and they support all things kidney care. But what this course is focused on are the 3 quality improvement priority areas that the network have sort of identified for that KQIP are supporting. So that's reducing peritonitis, which has been going for a while. We don't want to drop it, so that's still going. The Day Life project, which is just about to kick off again. We did lots of work pre-COVID, but we're going to kick it off again next month on the 19th of May, which is all about increasing uptake of home dialysis therapies. And then the Living Donor project, so improving access to home dialysis. So this course is really focused on helping you use the tools that can help you achieve your improvement aims in these 3 areas. So we'll be focused on those 3 areas in the course, and we'll use examples from them, and the breakout rooms are split into those 3 areas. But if you straddled through a few of those areas, if you're doing more than one of those projects or doing a different project, just pick one of them for the purpose of this course. So I think it'd be nice if you all have the same groups all the way through. You can really get to know each other and share learning, things like that. And also everything that we learn in this course is really transferable to any quality improvement initiative that you want to do locally. Okay, so this is the overview of the whole course. Hopefully most of you will have heard of the KQIP 10 Steps to Improvement. And this course, what we've done is basically just we're going to take you through each of those 10 steps. So today we'll be talking about leadership and teamwork, understanding your system and problem, so the system you want to change and the problem that you want to address, and thinking about how to define a project aim and scope. Then in session 2, we'll think about identifying and engaging our stakeholders and defining the drivers for our change and developing those change ideas. And then session 3 in October, we'll discuss measures and how to agree a measurement plan and baseline, and including baseline data. And then how to test change ideas using PDSA cycles, that's plan, do, study, act cycles. And then the final session in January, we'll be looking at how we display data over time to understand the impact of our changes and how we sustain and share improvements. So don't worry if all of that sounds meaningless right now. Hopefully by the end of the course, you'll have more of a sense of what it means. And also, I wanted to say your QI project might not move at the same pace as this course. I just wanted to make sure we cover every step fully, but I am here as the KQIP Programme Manager in the Midlands to support you locally. So I'm really happy to come and talk through any of the phases, any of the steps at any point, or recap any of them as well locally with your team, depending on what's most relevant to you. And then at the end of March, we'll have a celebration event, as I said, and that's virtual as well, but it's really over to you to share back with us what your project's been like, what you've achieved, what you've learned along the way. So I've sent out these 2 documents. I actually am going to say now I've updated them, so I'm going to resend them at the end of this course at the end of this session with the slides. But there's 2 documents that hopefully you'll use throughout the year. The first is a checklist, and that's really just a self-reflective document to think about whether and how you've completed each of the quality improvement steps we're encouraging you to move through as your project progresses. And then the second, which is the PowerPoint document, is a project workbook. And this is where I'd really love you to document all of your project work and your information. And I can help you fill this in locally, so you don't need to do it on your own. And I can help you use all the tools that we introduce at this course. And this will mean by the end of the year, we'll have a really consistent lot of project plans across the region and methodologies, and we'll be able to really understand what's worked and what hasn't, and what the learning's been along the way. So they won't all look the same by the end. because you can add things in, you can amend the tools as you wish, but please do use this as a framework to log your projects. Okay, so this session, we're going to be talking about preparing to lead QI. So that's all about motivating and engaging the right people to help you achieve your goals. And it's about understanding the system you're trying to change fully and from different perspectives before changing anything. And it's also about creating a really clear vision for what you're trying to achieve. And this foundation is the aim of today's session. So we're not going into any action phase just yet. We're not changing anything locally. Well, you might be, but in the course, we're just thinking about what the foundations are for change. And I'm also going to give you an overview of what QI means, what we mean by quality improvement as well. Hopefully it will be interactive and fun, so please don't be shy, make sure your camera's on and feel free to interrupt me. I can't actually see any hands up, so just let me know if you want to ask anything. I won't mind at all, and also share your own stories and experiences so that we can make it really relevant to you. So the first thing I want you to do is think about what quality improvement means to you. And I don't know, I'm sure some of you will have used Menti, but not all. If you could just, if you have access to a website, go to menti.com. It's an easy thing to remember, menti.com, and you can use this code that's on the screen here. Or you can use the QR code and just think about what quality improvement means to you and try and write it in no more than 3 words. If you can do that now, I will open the word cloud and we'll be able to see your answers in real time. Okay, so we're getting lots of ideas. Improving patient care, service improvement, value, safe, providing best care, problem solving, like that one. Better outcomes, long term, like that one as well. Better vomes. somebody was in a rush. Enhancing care, team, the future of the service. Longevity, changing. Thank you. So I know some of you have been doing quality improvement a long time, and some of you are new to it. But all of this is what quality improvement is. It's about change. It's about striving to be better. It's about improving things for your staff as well as your patients, and really thinking, how can we do things in the best way for our patients? So when we think about quality improvement, the first thing we want to understand is quality. What does quality mean? Can I just check you can see my slide sets now, because I've had to flick around?
Yes, yes,
Thanks,
we can.
Okay, there's not really a universally accepted definition of quality, but in England, what the NHS is organising itself around is a shared definition of care that is effective and is safe and that provides as positive experience as possible. And that's about being caring and responsive and personalised. There's a link at the bottom of this slide if you want to look at this in more detail, and I'll send all of these slides around at the end. And it also mentions about the healthcare system that you're working in being well led, sustainably resourced, and importantly, equitable. So that's about everybody having access to high quality care and outcomes. And being committed to understanding and reducing that variation and inequality. So if that's our definition of quality, what do we then mean by quality improvement? Well, you've just put lots of ideas on the screen, which are all correct. The Health Foundation, which is a really useful place to go and look about all things QI, and I've put a link on this slide here. They give a definition of quality improvement, which is about giving people the closest to issues affecting care quality. So I'd say that's all of you, the staff, as well as patients, the time, permission, skills and resources they need to solve those issues. It involves a systematic and coordinated approach to solving a problem using specific methods and tools with the aim of bringing about a measurable improvement. So that's quite a lengthy definition, but the key points are that it's implemented by people closest to care on the ground, staff and patients. It's systematic, and that you measure the impact of that improvement in real time. Quality improvement is also importantly about learning from the real world within your local setting on the ground. And that means it's actually often about culture. So it's about creating an environment where continuous learning and questioning of how things are done and trying new ways of doing things is embraced. And it's definitely not about judgment or blame. So it's about creating that learning environment, not always about what succeeds and what fails, but about the learning you get along the way. So I just want to also spell out the difference between quality assurance, so audit, and quality improvement, because lots of the times people think they're doing quality improvement, but what they're actually doing are audits. And audit cycles can come quite close to QI if you do them iteratively, but it still lacks emphasis on the real-time measurement and how recommendations are implemented. So audits can help you identify areas for improvement that can be addressed through QI initiatives. And just to help you with the difference, there's this useful table. So audits are often about measuring compliance with standards, whereas QI is about improving processes to meet those standards. Audits are often about getting a snapshot of data, for example, at a discrete time point. But QI is really about that continual measurement whilst you change things locally. Audits often look at past performance, whereas quality improvement looks at performance in real time. And audits are often given to teams from top down, so they have a series of recommendations that you audit yourself against. But quality improvement is really about bottom-up approach with stakeholder engagement. So thinking lots of different perspectives, teamwork, thinking about what is going to work to make your issue better, your problem better. Audits don't really emphasize teamwork, but quality improvement really does. You can't do it on your own. It's a real team sport. There are lots of methodologies in QI, but the model for improvement from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement is what KQIP really promotes, and it's very simple, which is why we like it. It just provides a framework for developing, testing, and implementing changes leading to improvement. And the core point of it is really to stop us taking immediate action without the wisdom of careful study. So using plan, do, study, act cycles helps you to test out changes on a small scale and then build on that learning from these test cycles in a structured way before you just implement something wholesale. And this really gives people the opportunity to see if what you're changing works, and also helps you learn from ideas that do and don't work. And it means the process of change is much safer and less disruptive for patients and staff. The final thing I wanted to say about QI is that people are really critical to its success. People are the drivers of change. They are the problem solvers. They're the people who come up with the ideas, the source of innovation. So empowering people can really help your organisation create a culture of quality and continuous improvement. And that benefits both the organisation and the staff as well as patients. And people can really make or break improvement initiatives, and it really depends on them. So it's worth spending some time and energy understanding who is going to be influential in your project, who is going to be impactful, getting them on board, and then also who's going to be impacted by your project. And engaging and making sure you understand those people is really key to the success of your improvement. So our KQIP methodology looks really simple, but we know that it is not at all simple. QI is done in a complicated and busy and unpredictable world, not in a research lab, so it doesn't always go to plan, and that is absolutely fine. What we're interested in about is the learning. So just again to reiterate, make sure you test things out on a small scale first to see if it works. And if it goes wrong, find out why. See if you can make it work better. And make sure you celebrate your successes along the way, because it's not easy. And don't give up. We're all in it together. So just to summarize, quality improvement is trying to improve things in a real world setting. It's finding out what works in your local context and setting, not anywhere else. It's about measuring change over time, and it's about continuous testing of small cycles of change and studying results. And it's about a bottom-up approach. So you on the ground thinking about ideas and testing them out. It's not about creating generalizable knowledge, although obviously shared learning is really encouraged because sometimes it is transferable. It isn't about implementing wholesale changes all at once, and it's not top down. It's really about people on the ground coming up with ideas. So the steps in QI that we're going to move you through. We actually have kind of already done agreeing an area for improvement using data, because the network, the Midlands Kidney Network, has agreed these priority areas for improvement. They've agreed to work on improving uptake of home dialysis therapies. They've agreed to work on reducing peritonitis and improving access to living donations. So they're kind of your areas for improvement. So instead of that step, I've just given you a QI overview. But the next step in our journey is this preparing to lead a quality improvement team. And that's what we're going to focus on next. Checking my time, all on time, good. Any questions about the QI overview before I move on to the next section? Good. Okay, so preparing to lead a QI team. I love this picture because I think most of us know that things can be done better, and we want things to change, and we feel like there's things that, yeah, could definitely be done in an easier or more efficient way. But then actually, humans really hate change. In reality, it's really difficult to change, and sometimes it feels easier to just carry on going in the way that it's always been done. And then leading change is even harder, because actually that's putting your neck up above the parapet and getting people on board with your idea, and maybe putting a bit more effort in the first few months or in the first year in order to make things easier in the future. But leadership is really fundamental to quality improvement, and it's where implementing quality improvement starts. You really need to prepare to lead people and get into the right mindset to change things. So this is the first breakout room session, and we've set up 3 breakout rooms. One's for people primarily interested in reducing peritonitis. One is for those of you who are interested in increasing uptake of home dialysis, so the day life teams, and one's for those interested in improving living donation. Don't worry too much if you want to join 2, and want to join, you know, if you're doing 2 projects, just choose one for the purpose of this course. It's just to get you, it's just to help you understand the tools and things like that. So don't worry too much about it, but if you could just pick one and stick with that for the course, that would be great. We have 10 minutes, and we'd really like you to think about these 2 questions. So think about when you've experienced good leadership and what made that person a good leader. And or think about a time when you've experienced bad leadership and what did it look like and what did it feel like. My colleagues are just going to put the link to the breakout in the chat. So all you have to do is click on the link and you'll automatically join a new meeting. And then when it comes close to 1:30, just leave that meeting and rejoin this main room. also just think about when it comes close to 1:30, think about who's going to feed back to the room and just a few key points from a discussion that you want to share with everybody else. So we'll have 5 minutes for feedback when we all come back to the main room. Leanne and I and Julie are going to stay here in this main room, but if you have any trouble getting where you're meant to be, just let us know. So you're just thinking about these 2 questions. What made a person a good leader? What makes a good leader? And what does bad leadership look like? And what does it feel like? And then we'll have 5 minutes of feedback in the main room afterwards at 1:30. Okay, thank you. Just because we've not got long, do you mind, Annette, if you start just giving us a couple of points from your breakout room? So you were the team.
Just a couple.
Just a few, just a minute or so. The main things you talked about.
All right, then. So
basically,
it was a lot of buzzwords really for what makes a good leader. We've just put things like collaborative, motivated, inspired. Make sure that everybody gets involved. Supportive, gives feedback which is constructive. Enthusiastic, recognise the value of the whole team, and appropriate delegation. That's for a good leader. And then a bad leadership, basically we said Donald Trump, autocratic, dictatorial, can't take feedback, not willing to change, and doesn't value any of the colleagues.
Yeah, thanks, Annette. And have you experienced good and bad leadership? Is there like, not that you have to say a specific example now, but can you all think about instances where you've experienced good or bad leadership and how that felt?
Jenny?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think probably we all can, but I think it's unusual that leadership is all bad or all good. So usually that, some people will display some really good characteristics, but perhaps some that aren't quite so effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on, people's mood and how stressed they are and how much they've got, there's so many other things that play into how you present as a person, isn't it? So it's just about being aware of those traits that make a good leader and try to kind of check ourselves when we're trying to lead a project. Thank you. So the day life breakout room, have you delegated somebody to feed back to the room about what you came up with? Bobby, you're shaking your head, but I'm going to call on you anyway.
We didn't delegate, but we did very much the same thing. A lot of buzzwords. Yeah. The willingness to support, motivation, clear goals, and for the negative, it was the same dictatorial, negative feedback, not recognising achievements. I mentioned a particular example about having a new leader who recognised that she didn't know the service as well, but was willing to learn from us and work as a team.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we're all leaders in some way, and especially you all here wanting to change things locally and improve. You're in a leadership position, and it doesn't have to be somebody who's a manager or who, is on a higher pay grade. It's about thinking about all of us as leaders in some way. Okay, and the living donor team, have you delegated somebody to feedback, and is there anything more that we haven't mentioned that you talked about in your breakout room?
I don't know.
Please put your cameras on as well.
Oh. We thought the same thing as what everybody else has said. The only thing we said differently was you can't lead on something that you don't understand. So especially with our new project, not that, our managers don't understand what we do, how much we do, shall we say. And it's quite difficult sometimes for them to recognise all the extra bits maybe you do.
Absolutely.
And just the same as what everybody else said, really.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really nice one to end on, because that's actually what we're coming on to next. It's about understanding what it is. Well, I've got a bit to say about leadership, But then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Leanne, who's really going to talk about having a really good understanding of what it is you're trying to change, the system that you work in, and that problem, and different perspectives of the problem, because different people will come up with lots of different reasons for the same problem, and having a good understanding of that before you try and change it is really important. Okay. So a lot of what you've just said is in this diagram. And they're all really important when we're trying to drive and deliver improvement on the ground. This was come up by this professor called Bill Lucas, who I don't know much about, but he's written a paper that really looked at the people who deliver improvements, so that's you guys, and what the sort of habits that they deployed regularly looked like. And he came up with this model. I know there's loads of models in QI and NHS, but I really like this one. So he's kind of he's themed all these different habits of improvers. So there's things about being influencing others, so being empathetic, facilitative, being comfortable with conflict, so you have to talk about what you don't agree with in order to change something. He's talked about learning, so being reflective, problem finding and questioning how things are done. Talks about systems thinking, so making connections and bringing together lots of different ideas, and being creative as well, so hopefully having fun with it and team playing, being critical, like thinking critically, but also being really creative when you think about your new ideas and generating ideas for change. And then being resilient, so improvers are often quite optimistic people. They're willing to take calculated risks in a safe way, and they're okay with a bit of uncertainty, which is really important when you're trying to change something, because you have to test it first to see if it works. Again, there's a link here that you can look much more in much more depth at this model. And all of this is really focusing on transforming mindsets. So one way an improvement leader converts people into accepting a new way of doing things, a new vision, is transforming mindsets. And people really often focus on changing outcomes, but actually this model is founded on the premise that mindsets are what influence behavior, and behavior influences practice, and practice influences outcomes. So if you change people's mindsets, your change is much more likely to be sustained and embedded than if you just focus on outcomes. So focusing on outcomes, you might change things in the short term, but because not everyone will understand the reasons for the change or believe in the change, it might not be sustained once you leave the unit or the project comes to an end. So it's really important to focus on people and people's mindsets. And it's also in people's nature to be quite late adopters of change and innovations. People don't really like changing. So the innovators are this tiny red group on the left of this curve. 2.5% of us are innovators. You're probably innovators because you're here. And they love new ideas. They like pushing against the status quo. And they like thinking outside the box. And then you've got the early adopters. And it doesn't take much for them to come and jump into something new. They like innovation, they're excited to be involved in innovation, and they see possibilities in things before others do. And early adopters are willing to move forward with something, even if they don't have all the answers. So as an improvement leader, what you need to do is find out who those early adopters are and get them involved and on board on what you're trying to do, because they can really help by bringing in the early and late majority, which is actually the most people. So most people will fall into this middle, the middle two, the early majority or the late majority. But it's the early adopters and the innovators who you want in your core team. The laggards are not really interested in change. There's always laggards, and they're always going to be around. They might not trust new things, new technology, and only change when they're forced to. And it takes a lot of effort to get laggards. Seems a bit rude saying laggards, but that's what it says on the model. Anyway, see, basically it takes a lot of energy to get them to join the party. So what we do is we actually just ignore them. They're not coming along, and it takes so much effort that it's best to just work with the early adopters, the early and late majority, try and get them on board. And then eventually, if you make the new way of doing things easier, and you try and sort of force it in. So if you've like created a new referral form, just make sure you throw away all the old ones. It's not, so make it as easy as possible to be the change. Then eventually those laggards will follow. That's not to say that you ignore resistance. So resistance is really common, and it can actually be really useful to you as an improver. So rather than seeing it as an obstacle, try and listen to resistance and be open to it, because it can actually help you think about your project in new ways and be clear about what it is and be clearer about what you're trying to achieve. Ways that you can deal with resistance is by being really open and talking directly to those people, using open-ended questions to better understand where people are coming from, and try and really listen. So if you're sharing an idea for improvement or what you want to do as your project, try and only speak for a quarter of the time and really listen to people's feedback as part of that conversation rather than just telling them what's going to happen. Make sure it's really clear that what's expected of people, and if they're going to be evaluated at all, make that really clear. People like to know what their expectations are. And also acknowledge that you're dealing with resistance. So make sure you realize it and acknowledge it. And because what's a small change for somebody might be really big from another perspective. And also try and answer the 2 me questions. So what's in it for me and what does it mean to me? And once the why is understood, then you focus on what. So what can we do to work it out? Get them involved and give them a role in the project, and then you can all move forward together. And if you really practice it being a good leader, getting your core QI team together shouldn't be too difficult. So this is really important, and I've seen loads of people try to do QI on their own, and it never works. QI is really a team sport, so it's really important to think about who's going to be in your core team. It doesn't have to be massive. I think about 6 or 7 members in a QI team is perfect. And some of the roles that you might want to think about allocating are a project lead. So you want somebody who leads the project. They focus on sharing a vision, transforming mindsets, engaging other people and keeping the momentum going. You might want somebody who's in charge of all the administration of the project, so setting up project meetings, logging actions and decisions. It would be great if somebody in your team is used to working with and understanding data, because that's so key in quality improvement. So think about whether you might have a data lead in your QI team, somebody that organises the collection of data and then helps to analyse it and present it to the wider team. And also communication, that's really important. So you might have a communications lead that might do, put presentations together or create a project notice board, create a project newsletter if you like. And then within all of these, make sure that you have champions with energy. So a lot of your team members will be asked to come up with new ideas. So these are the people that will be generating innovations, thinking about testing out new change ideas, and thinking outside the box. And then also, depending on who your project is going to impact and what areas of your unit will be impacted by the project, make sure that your QI team has representatives from all of those areas, because these are the people that are going to be collaborating on your problem solving and your ideas generation, and they're going to be testing out changes and feeding back on those change cycles. So make sure your QI team is representative of the areas that the project's going to impact. And then finally, it's so important to include people living with kidney disease when you're trying to change a service that ultimately has them at the end of it. So, and these people can collaborate on problem solving, they can generate ideas, and it really ensures that all the changes that you make are person-centered. And this, again, I just really like this picture. Make sure by listening to the user experience, the things that you design are going to be so much better. And that isn't just patients, that's staff as well, staff who use the pathway in practice. Just make sure you listen to everybody's ideas and agree a common way forward before just putting something in place. You'll always get a better result. So, as I said at the beginning, you've got these 2 documents, and at the end of each section, I'm just going to highlight what from those documents is relevant to what I've just talked about. So the self-assessment checklist and workbook, the 2 things that hopefully at the end of this section you will have feel comfortable with is having a local QI team. You'll have a local QI team and you'll have agreed roles and responsibilities for that team. And you'll have unit leadership support for our project. I actually haven't mentioned that, but that is a really important part of this step. So make sure that the leadership in your unit, whether that's the service lead, the matron, business manager, understand and have signed off on your project and what you're trying to do. Because without them on board, it's not going to be embedded. So page 2 of your workbook document, which again I'll send again at the end of this session, has just a really simple table that you can fill in to make sure you signed off those steps. Well done, because you have now completed step 1 and 2 of the 10 steps to QI, and we're now on step 3, and that is about understanding your system and your problem. We're soon going to move you back into breakout rooms and get you to do a bit of collaborating and thinking, but first my colleague Leanne is going to take you through some of the tools that are going to be useful for you at this step. So I will stop sharing and hand over to Leanne. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. So my name's Leanne, and I'm part of the KQIP QI team. And I've met some of you along the way. So I've got some slides as well. I do love our 10 steps in QI. I think it's a really simple process. Some people do them, and the reason why we sort of have it like that is so that you can move on to the next step. Once you really understand, once you've completed one step, you can move on to the next. I'm really proud of our 10 steps in QI. So it's really, really important to understand your problem and understand the system before you go and making those changes, because you don't want to put a plaster over the symptom. You want to make sure that you really understand the cause. And as Don Berwick, he's like the QI kind of guru in the QI world. This is a perfect quote that he says, every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So unless you make a change, you're always going to get the same results. So you need change to make improvement. But so yeah, it's really, really, really important that we look at the problem and we focus a lot of time in understanding that problem. So there's various tools, there's lots of tools that you can use to understand your problem. But for today, we're going to understand a bit about baseline data, what process mapping, cause and effect, and affinity diagrams. And the affinity diagram is what we'll do in the breakout room. So our baseline data, so we need to baseline our project before we make any changes, because how else will you know that a change has made a difference? So you have to baseline. And ideally, this is presented in a nice line run chart, as we call it. And ideally, to get a good baseline of your system would be 10 to 12 data points. So think about when you're baselining, what data do we already collect? Because if you're going to start a project now, you don't want to start baselining now, do you? You want your baseline data to be the past 12 months. What is this telling us? What is our baseline data? So it's really, really important that you've got access to your baseline before you make any changes. Another good way of understanding your problem is observing your current practice. So you can go around and you can observe what happens, sit in a clinic, sit with the specialist nurses, and just observe, have those fresh eyes. And again, that's a really good way of understanding the system. And there's some questions there that you can use as prompts. Process map is a really good way, does what it says on the tin. It maps out your process. So you start at one point and you write down each step of the process until you come to the end of the process. And by doing that, you will organically see your bottlenecks, the challenges, your areas for improvement. You will organically come up with improvement ideas. A process map is really, really effective if you have a process to process map. And this is something that we process mapped years ago, just to understand how we made a cup of tea. And this is a value process map. So what value does various steps in the process, and by asking that question, what value does this step give the patient? What value does this step give to us as staff? If the answer is there's no value, why do we have this step? And potentially remove that step out of the process if it doesn't add value. And then when you have your process map, you can then move to a future or an ideal state. And going from one to the other, you can develop those change ideas. But it's also good to, if you don't have a process, so if you're looking at something brand new that doesn't have a process, you could actually process map the ideal state map. Another good way of understanding your problem, your system, is mapping the last 10 patients. So understanding their journey, and you can map them out and record what happened. And again, that's a really good way of identifying those change ideas and those problem areas, those bottlenecks that need to be sorted. That's really helpful. And as Catherine says, quality improvement's a team sport. So you wouldn't be doing any of these activities on your own. So now that you've understood the system, you then and identify problems, you then want to kind of do a deep dive. So we call them like root cause analysis. I'm sure that's language that you have all heard of. So we do like a root cause analysis, and there's many ways that we can do that. So the simplest one, I think, is using the 5 whys. And if you think of the 2-year-old child who is learning, why is the sky blue? Well, why is it blue? And you give an answer and they say, but why? And then they'll give another answer, but why? Because what they're doing is they're learning. They're learning. And it's the same kind of principle with the 5 whys. What you're doing is you're learning. You're learning why we behave that way. We're learning why we do it in such a why our mindset is like this. So that is fairly simple concept. And then we have another one, which is cause and effect, or a fishbone, because it looks like a fish. And this is really, really good for understanding. So you've got your problem here in the effect. So this is the problem. And you want to understand why we've got that problem, and we've got those contributing causes, those factors. So what causes that problem? So this is what it looks like. And you've got, like I say, you've got those causes in there. And this is an example. Time from arrival to unit to starting treatment is too long. So there's various causes in there. There's staff, there's communication, equipment, measurement. And in each of those, there's other reasons why that happens. So again, it's just diving deeper into the causes. And this is the activity that we're going to do. It's called an affinity diagram. And again, it's a really simple concept. We've got virtual post-it notes. So we will write down ideas that are causing problems in a particular area. And we'll write them all down. And then what we'll then do is we'll then sort them into themes. And then that then helps us to see where we need to focus our improvement work. So it is really, so we'll all come up with 20, 30 different problems, but if we can theme them all, it just helps us to move the project forward, and we can then helps us develop our change ideas further down the path. So looking back to your workbook, this is page 3 and 5. So in there's a process map, and not every project you won't need to do a process map or a fishbone or an affinity diagram. You don't need to do them all. We're just saying use what's appropriate for you in your project. And I think I will hand it back to Catherine.
Thanks, Leanne. Okay, so this is another bit of over to you. We're gonna again put the 3 links to the 3 breakout rooms in the chat. So join the same one that you did last time. Hopefully you get there okay. And then Leanne, Julie and I are also going to join this time, and we will be brainstorming. I've already made some problems for us. So there'll be a problem that we will all discuss, and we'll brainstorm lots of potential causes for that problem, and then we'll try and theme them and agree themes as a group, and then we'll come back to the main room and somebody from each group will share those affinity diagrams. And this is just, as Leanne said, a way of understanding a problem from lots of different perspectives so that we can think about what the most effective way of solving that problem is. Okay, so we're going to come back at 2:15, so 2:15, I think. We'll come back to the room and then we'll just have a couple of minutes feedback, move on to the next section.
Thank you.
So I know that in my group, Jenny was happy to feedback. So you're all right to start, Jenny. Just feedback just a minute on, I'm just going to share my screen and you can just talk through our affinity diagram.
Oh.
Ta-da!
Oh, you're very fancy with all your different colours. I'm going to go back to mine now.
Let me move this up. Okay, Jenny, over to you. You're on mute.
Thank you. So we looked at why there are high numbers of peritonitis infections in our unit. So we looked at quite a big general problem. And then we sort of brainstormed lots of different things and could have gone on for a long time with that. And then what we've then done is moved them into different groups, some of the problems we found crossed over into more than one group as well. So loosely we've split them into things that are to do with staff, things that are to do with the system, things that are to do with the selection of patients, things that are to do with the characteristics of patients, things that are to do with how we train our patients, and then environmental factors, which was Christmas and summer.
Thanks,
so
Jenny.
yeah, so we've sort of broken it down like that, and obviously we found the patient characteristics was the one that seems to have been had most of the issues flagged up in it.
Perfect, thank you. Day life then, Leanne, just because I know you've been back. You were back first.
So, yeah, that's okay. So Vanessa, I will share our screen. I have tried to tidy it up a little bit and color coded it.
Well, we looked at why there's a low uptake of home dialysis in our unit, and it's in groups again. It looks at education, it looks at who the education's from, when patients get the education, who they get the education from and at what point. We looked at doctors' bias and lack of understanding from patients and when they get the information, so the first contact with AKCC. Then we looked at resources. So lack of assisted APD. We looked at external factors for patients regarding housing. We just had a nurse who's told us that they've had to buy a machine through charitable funds because they can't do more dialysis machines. And also then we get the patients sharing information with each other, which isn't necessarily positive or true, or all those sorts of benefit, all those sort of factors. But a lot of the themes are all the same. It's all about education, when, where.
Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa. Brilliant. Okay, and last but not least, the living donor team.
I think we were least. We worked hard, the two of us in our group.
Oh,
oh, right. Is that, how's that? Is that okay? Can you can everybody
see
We
that?
got one missing. We got some missing. I can't see the bottom.
There at the bottom.
Oh yeah, if you just make it a bit smaller, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Or zoom out or something. Okay,
It's
so
not making it smaller. Oh, sorry.
Not, yeah.
Sorry. Go away. There we go.
Okay, so we were looking at why living donors might be dropping out, and we sort of had a think about things, and we thought about the sort of the system problems or barriers in terms of the way our systems are configured, delays, the lag between having investigations and getting decisions, the number of hospital visits, and some geography type problems. So the sort of system issues. And then we talked about communication, both recipient and donor communication. So in terms of are our recipients actually got enough information to be able to talk to potential donors? Are they comfortable talking to potential donors, but also are they giving them the right information to come forward and to understand what they're putting themselves forward for? And are we getting the right sort of donors coming forward, or are we just getting everybody, many of which are unsuitable? So there's the communication with the recipient. And then we talked about the communication with the potential donors, and how much they understand of the process, how much they can be reassured about process and effects, but also if there are specific things that those donors need to do, such that they may be, they're often told away to go and lose weight, told to go away and lose weight, or to monitor blood pressure or things like that, and how much support they might get with those things and how easy those things for them to do. And they may sort of how much they actually want to be involved in the process itself. And then we had a little one sitting out on the side, which was about the sharing scheme, because it didn't really fit. So those donors that are suitable but then don't want to, but can't donate directly, and whether they're actually got buy-in to the sharing scheme. We thought that sat as a separate thing. So though it's communication, it's not necessarily understanding. It's very much a
kind of motivates that person.
So I thought that sat separately, really.
Brilliant, thank you. So this is just a really useful tool, and as Leanne said, there's lots of different tools to understand your system and problem, but the most important thing is that when you're doing that, when you're at that stage, make sure you involve as many people as you can. So you might start a fishbone diagram, but then go and share it with the different teams, with the AKC team or with the in-centre dialysis team, and then get lots of different perspectives on your problem so that everybody feels involved in that solution. Because if you just say we've got a problem and this is how what we're going to do about it, you're less likely to get people on board with what you're trying to do. Whereas if you get them engaged in actually understanding the problem and finding those solutions, you'll get people on board. Okay, I know we're running short of time. The very final bit of our session, and we've not got any more breakouts, but Julie's just going to talk us quickly through defining a project aim and scope, because that's what I want you all to go away. Some of you have a name for your project, which is absolutely fine and great. If you haven't yet, what I'd really like is before the July session for you to have a smart aim for your project, and we can come back and share them at the next session. So over to you, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you see the slides and hear me?
All good, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, great. So I'm going to do a very quick whistle-stop tour of a smart aim and scope for your project. So first of all, and I'm sure you know this, but your aim should be smart, and this is about making it so it's something that's really going to be to really drill down into exactly what it is that you want to achieve. I'll just go through each of these elements of the SMART aim. The SMART, we love our acronyms, don't we? So SMART, it should be specific. So you can, and again, you can use another tool, which is the W. So who's going to be achieving the goal? What project management tools do you need to do that? Why is it an important goal? Where is it going to be happening, and which resources do you need? So really think about what it is that you are going to try and achieve in this project. Measurable, we love our data, and it's really important to make sure that you can measure where you are now before you make a start, and find something that you can measure to show whether or not the changes that you're making are leading to improvement. And the reason is really quite simple. It's to make it so you can see if you're doing well or you're not doing well, and it can give you that motivation or that cue to make changes to what it is you're doing. So set that up before you start. Really important step, part of a SMART aim. Next, it should be achievable. You don't want to be, it's soul destroying if you're trying to do something, you want to do 100% of something. It's going to be really tricky to do, but aim high. We always recommend that you go high, aim high, but keep it realistic. Try and go beyond what you think you would really normally be possible. Know what your resources are and know that it can be accomplished using the time and costs that you've got. Make sure it is realistic, and it should be relevant. So make sure it sort of fits in with what your organisation is trying to do. Don't try and do something which goes against the grain and against your organisation. So make sure that it is a relevant aim. And finally, really important, put some times on it. If you don't put a time on it, these projects can drift on forever. So, give it, by the end of 2025 or by the end of 2026, and use your 30, 60, 90-day planners to make sure that you achieve your times. And we'll come on to those much later, I think. I just wanted to give you a bit of time. A few examples. I don't think in the interest of time that I'm going to get you to do this, but just have a little look and think to yourself, which ones are SMART, and can you spot the ones which aren't? And I know I'm being very, very quick here, but I'm hoping that you can see the themes here. The ones which are SMART, the ones that have got numbers in and times. The ones which aren't SMART, reduce the number of complaints. And I think you can tell that that's not SMART, because how many complaints are you having? What do you want to get it down to? And what are the complaints about? Perform more transplants. Yes, we all want to do that, but increase the number of transplants by this to that and by a certain time would be a much better and a SMART aim. And again, improving waiting times. It's just not a SMART aim. So I'm sure you'll have these slides sent out to you afterwards, and you can have a little bit more time to look at them. But some of these are real SMART aims from real KQIP projects that we've been working on. I'm going to skip by the next one about making a vision, but I just wanted to very quickly talk to you about scope. When you've created your aim and you start talking to people in your organisation about what it is you're going to do, you are definitely going to come across people who are going to say, oh, would you think about this as well, or would you add on that? So it's really important right from the start of your project that you're very specific about what it is you're going to be doing for this project, what's in and what's out. And you can use this really very basic tool, which is put your SMART aim in here. This is exactly what's in the project. And if it's just for your unit, include in your aim the name of your unit. And then out of your project will be all the other units. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to come to those, but you're going to be doing yours for now. So make sure that you're not tempted to try and make your scope go bigger and bigger and bigger and make your project something that's not manageable. So really important to think about what it is that you want to do in your project and what can be parked and thought about later after you've successfully implemented your project. Okay, so I hope that was quick enough, Catherine.
That was perfect. Thank you, Julie.
Okay.
I'll take over now.
Yes,
I'm going to steal a screen.
Okay.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, so what I sorry, what Julie just talked about is again in your project workbook. So page 6 and 7, you've got a smart aim template and you've got that scope diagram that you can try. It's really important to document that at this stage so that you can share it with others, but also refer back to it if you have a question, you think about, oh, is that included? I can't remember. Between now and the next one, which is in July, some of the things you might want to think about are what data do you have available to you to really understand what your baseline data looks like or understand your system? What issues or systems do you want to better understand at this stage? And who do you need to involve? That's a really important one. And all of these will help in guiding your team to create a meaningful SMART aim statement for your project. And what I would love you all to do is bring your aim statements to the next meeting in July. You may already have them, or you may be just thinking about setting one, but you've got a good few months to go away, look at your system, look at your context, talk to the rest of your team and to patients, and really refine that SMART aim. Be as specific as you can, and try and make it achievable in 12 months if you can. So what I'd love is for you all to have an aim statement that is by the end of March 2026. Because that will mean we really focus on what we want to achieve this year, make it specific, make it achievable, and then at the end of this course we'll be able to share our progress on that aim statement. You can absolutely have a longer term aim as well if you wish, or you can have a stretch goal, that's fine. I just really want to be clear what we want to achieve as a community in the next 12 months. Just the next dates for your diary. So all of the projects, the KQIP projects, Day Life, Living Donor, Peritonitis, have the support of me, your KQIP Programme Manager, and I am more than happy to come out to your units, have local meetings with your team and your wider quality improvement team. I'd like to catch up with you at least quarterly, and that can be a mixture of virtual catch-ups over Teams or me coming out to your units. The Living Donor teams, we have, if you're a unit that refers to Birmingham, we've got a workshop next week that I hope you have heard about. It's on Thursday, the 8th of May, where we will be putting into practice that process mapping that Leanne talked about, and also working on developing SMART aim for the next 12 months. The Day Life and Peritonitis teams, we've got the Day Life event on the 19th of May, which again, I hope you've all been invited to and have the link if you want to register to attend. And we will be really thinking about leadership at that session. And again, trying to think about what our aim statements might be as unit teams for the next year or two. And then the next QI Essentials course, so this one, the next session's on 16th of July, where we'll be talking about engaging and identifying those stakeholders and defining the drivers in your change ideas, developing those change ideas. So thinking about what can we do about our problems. Just before you leave, I would be very grateful if you could complete this really short feedback form about this session. We'll have one at the end of every session, just so we can make sure we're doing our best and improving if we need to. And my colleagues put the link to the feedback form in the chat, so if you wouldn't mind just taking 1 minute to fill that in. And I will stop there, and I'm going to send you all the slides from today, and I'm going to send you the updated workbook and project checklist, because we have, as a team, slightly amended our 10 steps of improvement. So I had to update all the documentation. So please use the ones that I send you today with the slides for your project progress and documenting. And just use me, get in touch with me, send me an email if you didn't understand anything, have any questions. Invite me to your project team meetings, whatever you need. I'm here to support you achieve your improvement goals. So thanks so much for taking the time to join, and hope to see you in July, if not before.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.